your truest self, explore your utmost potential.
So today we're shooting episode 2 of the ICT Dynamic Women Podcast. We're here at the Edgars Beauty Store with our friends from Bobbi Brown. Today we are talking everything EdTech. I am so excited because there's something very close to my heart. We are literally talking to access to digital education. How can we get our youth to access that more? But most importantly, who is the woman behind the face, who is the face behind all of that? So today we have Naledi Moncho with us in studio. She will actually be talking us through her journey. I'm very excited.
Quite exciting. I think this is a nice feat. The fact that we got to do our makeup done professionally by Clarins. Also get to know more about the products and the benefits of the products that we're using. So, yeah.
She is dynamic. She is challenging the status quo. She is bringing education to the forefront through digital platforms. So we will get to hear all about her and what she has done for the space. But I'm also excited about is the fact that from here, we then move on to the Radisson, where we will be hosting in the penthouse. So very grateful for the Radisson for hosting us as well there. So I can't wait. So join me today as we talk everything EdTech.
So these kind of platforms, such as the podcast that we're about to do today, they allow us to voice our opinions and or action for change.
Hello and welcome to the second episode of the ICT Dynamic Women Podcast, where we unmask the wonderful and dynamic women behind the ICT sector in South Africa. Today, I have the pleasure of having a dynamic and wonderful powerhouse, Naledi Moncho, who is a brilliant example of how to break barriers and actually challenge the status quo when it comes to EdTech, providing access to those that do not have access to digital information or digital education. She is the founder of Paideia, previously known as Mapaseka Academy. Let's just get into the conversation. Naledi, welcome, and thank you so much for gracing us today with your presence.
Thank you so much for having me, Sibongile.
Awesome. Let's start off with your journey. I am in love with founders' journeys.
Oh, yes.
How did we come to Mapaseka Academy? Before even the transition, what led you to EdTech?
All right. So originally we were in the software development space and COVID hit us. And with COVID, our offices were actually right across where then a very big IT training, very known IT training company had their offices in Rivonia. However, they had to close down brick and mortar. And during lockdown, I was busting my head because remember, I'm a mom. I had a son who still, had to complete his school activities. And the school was not ready. Universities were not ready. Just the workplace was not ready. And I thought to myself, what is it that we can introduce that ties in life as per usual, but just on a tool? Being someone that thinks outside the box, I'm solution driven, just naturally. You give me a problem, I'll try and pick around it and see what solution can derive from that challenge or problem. And that's where I had a brain fart. And the EdTech tool came to light, and that was literally in my bedroom. depressed, not looking very good. We were all very crusty at
We
that
were.
time. And I started then, just noting it down how this tool is going to look like. As a mother, firstly, it was
Yes.
for my son, how do I, because he was privileged at least enough for the school to make a plan or come up with a solution very quickly. However, there were a lot more schools in the townships that were affected, a lot more schools in, peri-urban areas that were affected and
Yes.
do not have the necessary means or tools. That means there would be a lag for those kids in that academic year.
Yes.
And that was the sole source of the EdTech platform, and Mapaseka being founded, and us then started. In fact, we started with building the tool right before we even registered the company with CIPC and the
I mean, there
likes.
was a demand at the time.
There was a
Yeah.
demand at the time. And that's where my interest and my love and my passion for just generally skills development, digital transformation, because then it just made sense. They were not buzzwords anymore.
Yes.
It was practical.
It was now a necessity.
It was a necessity
a new normal.
and a new normal,
Yeah.
and part of our lives. And we had a voice, and we could action, and we could solution. And from there on out, we walked the journey still under the brand name Mapaseka Academy, which was actually my late grandmother's name.
Yes.
She succumbed to COVID back in 2020.
Yes.
Huge custodian and ambassador for education.
Yes.
For a young woman, as she was not educated herself. She, succumb to societal norms. I'm from Kimberley, so it's a very, a lot needs to happen.
Yes.
However, we do have a university now, Salt Lake University. I'm very excited, love to collaborate with them and bring, my passion, my work back home. But going back to her story, she was one that would have, these talks with me, and emphasize the importance of education. She said, a lot of people can take a lot away from you, but they can never take away your education.
And I absolutely love that. And I think, it is one of the things that we look at and we say, who are the women behind us that push us for us to actually continue on our journeys? And I think yours is quite profound because Mapaseka was actually founded and named after your late grandmother. And then moving into Paideia, I'd like to just know, now that you've rebranded and obviously evolved, tell us more about that transformation. What has inspired your brand today, and what has inspired, that transition, and what does it stand for now? Because obviously, starting off from, I need a solution because we are in COVID, and now saying this is our new normal. How has that transition been for you?
I think when you talk transition, when you are now interested in solutioning for something, a challenge, you do your research. Once you do your research, you come up with these statistics that will literally have you faint.
Yeah.
And for me, I wanted to tie in all these elements that allow me to offer a broad spec of, ICT. When I say ICT, I know it's very broad.
Yes.
ICT courses. So I had to, dig deeper into, okay, fine, our solution is in software, but how do I then, to make it more accessible to everyone and include everyone? How do I start at the very foundation of skills development and digital transformation and, digital inclusion?
Yeah.
And you can't just, you realize that you can't just go to a place and give computer lessons. Yes, it'll be beneficial for whichever area you're serving, but what is most beneficial is the certification thereof.
Yes.
So that the person that has been impacted can be employable. and employability. As much as we've got an unemployment challenge in the country,
It's
employability has
Yes.
been also another challenge that we've been trying to, solve by bringing in the importance of, sometimes it's just a short certification, upskill yourself so that you are able to become employable. So we had to research and know, okay, fine, we're moving from the SETAs. There are X amount of SETAs. They're all responsible for a specific sector. They all are mandated. They have money to give us,
Yes.
discretionary grants,
Yeah.
mandatory grants, special project grants. You can just come up with this brilliant idea and solution together with state organs, because at the end of the day, where does the money come from?
From the state.
That's
And all these other private companies
and
that
private
we will get to
companies.
talk to.
Yeah.
And I think your passion on digital inclusion, that is quite something that we always talk about in South Africa, right? I mean, we talk about the fourth industrial revolution, and I always say that ship has sailed. We are already on that. However, we sit with a bigger problem in South Africa, which is then the digital divide,
Yes.
right? So we're talking digital inclusion. However, when we look at how do we now ensure accessibility to edutech, or edtech, how do we now bring that closer to home? So your work that you do, and behind Paideia, how do you bridge that digital divide, and how do you, especially for underserved communities, who have you partnered with, and how has that journey been for you to bring that to the fore and bring that inclusion closer to home?
All right. So there has been quite a number of initiatives that we worked on at Paideia. Firstly, just to mention, you need to understand the market what you're trying to solve.
Yes.
Once you understand exactly what you're trying to solve, you then understand who your key strategic partners are. I was fortunate enough in the inception of Mapaseka to then be part of the Telkom Future Makers program, and
Yes.
beneficiated with Telkom Future Makers. And boy, has it's just, my life in business has been the most beautiful story to tell, in terms of a quick turnaround, in terms of success rate, in terms of producing the know-how, the ability to the trust.
Yes.
And it boils down to trust from a lot of corporates, right?
Yeah.
If they could trust us as industry and us as contributors in industry, and allow us to then, bring up our solutions and try and bridge whatever divide there is. So Telkom Future Makers was the very first corporate that took me along the journey and said, we will groom you and we will help you. And I take that as help because, remember, I was in the software space. I had just recently come from corporate. I'm pushing this thing. So sometimes when you're a founder, you're all over the place because you're so in love with your product.
Yes.
You don't want to be criticized. You don't want
It's
to.
your baby,
It's your
after all.
baby. You want to be told, change this.
Yeah.
Actually, this is a failure, or whatever the case may be.
Yeah.
So they brought me along and they helped me with, softer things, or softer, what's the word, direction on a more softer note in terms of direct market access.
Yes.
What it is that I can do as a contributor in the EdTech and in the education space. So my very first corporate contract was actually from Telkom Group, BCX.
Wow.
Where we had 49 employed learners, and they're graduating this year. So
Congratulations. Wow.
this year. That started the journey with us in 2023. But not only that, Telkom is very instrumental in assisting with funding for further development of my EdTech tool. And that then allowed us to, integrate and push on so many other things and kind of develop it into a tool or a platform that is for the people,
Yeah.
and that is more inclusive of the kind of certifications and learning journeys that typical South Africans need.
Yes.
Not something that is curated internationally and pushed down our throats.
So something that's really needed with
Something
developing
that's
skills.
really, really needed, and something that can be accessible. So they've been very supportive in the development of the tool. We've had engagements on, how we can leverage off certain partnerships with Telkom as Lightbulb, and what is this? Sorry. I lost my flow.
That's right.
It's Lightbulb, Telkom Lightbulb, right?
Yeah.
Yes, it's Telkom Lightbulb, as well as many other initiatives that they have had internally. So with Telkom also being a major part of or contributor as a state-owned entity, especially within the ICT space,
Yes.
they cover, going back to the broadness of ICT, the connectivity thereof, the software, the infrastructure, what makes IT IT.
Which then talks to the access, right?
Which then talks to the access. So we've been having talks in terms of zero rating for the platform to be accessible.
Yes.
But there are other partnerships that we have formed along our journey. We've had talks with Yovumatal, which is part of the massive group of companies. They've been rather interested. In fact, we've done work for them within in another entity, but that work was an eye-opener for me, because that's when I realized that we do not know, because we don't immerse ourselves in our partnerships. We do not know what our partners are doing further than just their core business. So wherever Vuma builds, they sponsor the schools with free internet access, hotspots and the likes.
Wow.
And in the townships where they've built, they've allowed for those nodes, for kids to access whatever it is that they need to access on the internet, for schoolwork, for teachers as well, to access extra learning materials. And that's where we come in, where you merge and you say, okay, fine, as Vuma, they've done this, they've really done their part. How can I contribute then to making sure that the community sees the value of this thing called internet? We can all use and consume. We're consumers generally.
Yes.
As people. We can all just consume and consume, but it's the how in which you consume something. You've got internet. You can spend the whole day on social media.
I was actually about to touch on that.
Or
Yeah.
you can see, okay, fine, I can actually download this thing on my mobile, have it on my mobile. From there on, I can self-test myself, buy a course online, do the course online, submit my assessments online. So, that paper-based system of doing skills development it's aggressively actually kind of exiting the space. Everything is done online. Assessments are pushed online. You get your results online. So it's the education, trying to educate people on what are the benefits of this thing called internet. What is internet, and what can internet get you?
So talk to me about the issues on adoption. What have you seen? What is the trend? I mean, if we look at statistics, right, we're looking at more than 80% of the South African population have an access to a smartphone.
Yes.
If we're looking at laptops, maybe we're then getting to, second level digital divide, where we say, I've got the equipment, I've got the laptop, I've got the phone, but I really don't know what to do with it extra. So what has been your, your take and what have you seen out there? Are we still dealing first level digital divide where we have no access, we have no internet connection, nor do we have device, or we do have a device, but we are on, just we don't have the internet?
Yeah.
Or is it second level, I have it? Or is it also third level where you are, as you said, in your household, you said, but my son has the access, has this, but then do they have someone who can show them what else they can do with this, where they can now monetize and build from that? Where are we? Would you say we're still stuck in second level, first level, and therefore impacting adoption?
It's when you're in my industry, skills development particularly, it's a sad reality in our country. There's literally those three levels that you spoke about. They all exist in their own unique ways. I've been to the most rural part of the Eastern Cape, where there is no network to even call someone. I've been to areas where kids have access to computer labs. I've been to areas where kids had access to computer labs, where their very own community vandalized and stole devices so that they are able to then sell them. Schools are getting targeted for whatever. So it's very sad, because there's access. Yes, 49 or at least 50% as of 2024 have access to social media and social media content in terms of the population. But that 50% sits in metro areas, that 50% sits in more developed areas. So if you go into, I'm very passionate about this because I come from a place where there's absolutely nothing in terms of opportunity, in terms of recreational activities for the youth. Nothing besides, alcohol and a cycle that just never ever stops. So the adoption for me is in the soft skills, the educating people. Sometimes it's a matter of having a town hall with people and saying, okay, guys, do you guys know what internet is? Going to schools and educating people that, learners, do you know that if you have internet, you can literally have your story known, or your ambitions, you can convert them into a reality, because it plugs you with the global community. There's so much out there. So let's first start with the understanding of technology. People generally don't have a basic understanding of different technology streams and platforms and infrastructure. I've mentioned that we are also in the infrastructure space when it comes to internet connectivity. And sometimes you get into a community in the rural part of let's say, Eastern Cape, and there are the community members coming thinking that, are we getting electricity? Because usually it's aerial fiber. Are we getting electricity? Is it No, I don't need any electricity. No, it's internet.
It's internet.
Okay, internet for what? What do you need internet for? Then they'll show you, you're putting up internet. We don't have a road. We don't have this. We don't have that. So it's just something that they feel like they don't need. But it's the thinking of the parent of that household versus the future of that household, which is the child.
And I think, now that you're talking about that, if we look at, when we're at the discussion around, you get into the township and there's all these satellite dishes, right? And then everyone is watching this and everyone is on socials. And we've seen, from the time Minister Panyaza Lesufi at the time, I think Panyaza Lesufi had spoken about how they are, putting the internet and they're creating digital classrooms and classrooms of the future. However, we still sit with educators that are even afraid of laptops. So there's that. So that then brings us to the policy influencing, you as a dynamic woman in this space, in EdTech. If you look at the policies that government has put in or have in place and what they are trying to do in their spaces, what would you say in this space? What would you say needs to change? Are they doing enough? I mean, stands for they can't, change the fact that someone is vandalizing a school, or I mean, there's all these platforms that have been created from 2020. But how do you think they've done enough? Maybe let's start there.
I think more needs to be done. I do recognize the government of South Africa. I feel like they have really tried push the narrative in terms of digital inclusion, and really have tried. I've worked for state-owned company, and they did quite a lot of rollouts of labs in rural communities. But in terms of policy, I think a lot more can be done to change the direction of innovation and South African tech-based, South African-based tech tools. Sorry.
Yeah.
We talk about us being solution-driven as the youth. We know that we are a majority youth country.
Yeah, absolutely.
We do have the solutions as the youth. We're not as gullible as maybe sometimes it comes out across when you talk to, which I have the privilege of in my space. So a lot of the youth, they have the solutions for their communities.
Yeah.
And I feel like the government, instead of creating programs as a tick box exercise, they should really have the youth involved in trying to solve challenges within their communities. I am a big believer of town halls for the youth.
And it's getting back to the community, right? Because you are taking the information to the community.
And you'd be surprised how many innovators are in those townships, are in those areas. There are a lot of youth that have tools or ideas, rather, innovative ideas, or they've developed them. So I've met innovators in the townships that have taught themselves how to code on YouTube.
Sure.
They've taught themselves how to code. We have a lot of youth that are very interested in technology and technology advancements and creating their own tools and platforms. However, they don't have access to funds. I can name so many. There was a young gentleman that I knew. He was on Metro FM. And his dream completely died because of funding, but he had a design for a laptop, devices, tablets manufactured in South Africa for South Africans at a cheaper rate. We don't have to import them. He just needed key strategic stakeholders to hold hands and say, let us support this initiative. We needed ICASA, you needed whether it's DTIC, whether it's all the departments that are relative to IT industry and trade and manufacturing. That fell flat with all the media and attention that it got. Because of funding, but he still lives on with his dream. He still tries, he still has his little prototype and the likes. I know of another young boy from Limpopo. In fact, he's from Njerere, Venda side, and he had taught himself brilliant mind. You could lick his brains. But he did not go to a formal, education where you say, okay, this is what I'm doing. I'm going to be coding, and he just literally off the bat, YouTube and self-taught himself, and then taught his brother. And that's how his little community of coders had begun. There are plenty other stories that I can tell, plenty other real life people that I've seen. They've been at incubation hubs. They've sat there for a whole entire year. But the incubation hub literally just exists. If there is no contribution from private business, from
From
government,
government.
and private also being in and knowing what government initiatives, because there are quite a number of initiatives that government is running.
Yes.
However, private doesn't have that buy-in.
So I think that maybe talks to what you were talking about, when we're talking about the policy shifts.
Yes.
If you were to write a sentence on a policy document when it comes to EdTech, or if it comes to just the efforts of the government, what would that policy shift be? I mean, we've spoken about buying local, we've all spoken about investing in local developers and local platforms, but what would be that one thing that you would advocate for? Because obviously this is real advocacy now at play.
Skills transfer, skills importing. We can go out abroad and say, we need this technology, but once this person or this owner of this technology decides to plug it away and say, these are my toys, they are absolutely allowed to do so.
Yes, they can take them.
They can take.
Yeah.
However,
so there's no continuation.
There's no continuation. If you take the youth, those that are very much interested in innovation and helping solve and solution for our country's challenges, you take them, you take majority of the money that is spent on these international trips, you take these kids to not a school, again, because remember, we'd be doing the training this side. However, you base them at an internationally recognized company. I don't want to be naming any brands, but you take some kids, you put them at Silicon Valley. You take some kids, you take them to the Dubai Techno, district.
Or even our own Silicon Valley in Cape Town.
Or even our own
I call it the Silicon Valley in Cape Town.
But I feel like the contribution of the larger tech giants, which have been plugging us here in South Africa, infrastructure and the likes, tools and platforms, can do more in taking, and because they've got relations globally, they've got offices globally, they can have programs, implement programs, and say, work with the CETA, work with MICT CETA, and say, how many top performers do you have from your skills providers in the AI software development program that you have, in the robotics development program, your cyber? Can you please just, from all the SPs, may I have those names? We want to form a partnership, some sort of partnership with Microsoft, where we literally teach these kids. And they can have their work-based learning, not just at a company they did IT, but the company has them running around for coffee because there's nothing really in South Africa for you to do in terms of innovations, because the money is abroad. If you want to be an innovator, you have to be rich. If you want to be a solutioner and come up with this and it fails and because there's failure in the process of innovation, we need to import and impart those skills for the youth and create programs that allow for that fluid exchange.
For the exchange,
the global community or the global tech community, as well as our youth, And in terms of policy change, something that I feel strongly for is preferential points, just like we get preferential points for being Black. It's my country. I'm comfortable in the color of my skin, but give me points for innovation.
For innovation, Give
me points for, having an exclusive, custom-made solution for the Department of.
Wow.
Give me points for having implemented a large-scale enterprise solution for telecom. Give me points for that.
I literally just got goosebumps because this is like a topic all around, right? Right now, we've got, the debate around how we're scrapping BEE. And, sometimes when I coach young founders, I always say, no one cares if you're going to write 100% Black. What do you bring to the table? And this is literally just given me goosebumps, because as we're saying, if you start giving me points, because I have innovated this and it has shown results. In a country where we sit with a skills shortage, in a country where we sit with huge unemployment, and as you said, employability stats that are numbers that are down, this is literally something that it should be done.
Yes.
So, I mean, and this talks about, breaking barriers as well. And because you're saying it's innovation and it's being able to say, I'm an innovator, but I don't need to be rich.
Yes.
And then, I just wanted, before I let you go, just around just two more things. How did you tackle breaking barriers? And I mean, entering the B2B space, we've already touched on Telkom Future Makers and how they were instrumental in helping you open doors and breaking down those barriers. But you as Naledi, how have you done that beyond Telkom Future Makers? Do you think, you would have done more?
So, as Naledi, I have invested in myself to understand what the global community is doing, what makes them successful. So, I've been to various other countries where I've learned through their business chambers or however that how they do things.
Yes.
So, for instance, the Belarusian or the people in Belarus, they manufacture most of their things. They own most of their products. They were not affected really much by sanctions because life could still continue.
Could continue, yes.
They were innovators. There was a Yandex instead of an Uber. So there was this instead of that. You go to another country, you see something else, and you're like, but guys, why can we not do this?
Yeah.
Generally, as a female, I had to channel myself, very soft-spoken female, smallanyana young girl.
Yeah.
Usually in the boardroom, the perception is there is either a male
behind
me. It's 100% me. I've been vocal. I believe in my passion. I believe in my ambition. I literally, sometimes people, in my family would say to me, you need to rest. And I'm like, can't rest.
Yeah.
I can't rest. And just being attractive overall as a person, investing time in self-development is very key and critical. No one is going to give you what you want. You have to chase for it. You have to work for it. You have to,
right. No one is coming to save you.
No one is coming to save you.
Yeah.
But also what I've picked up in my engagements in different countries is the support that private and government has for initiatives throughout, and the partnerships between private and government that allow certain things to happen.
Yeah.
And what is most important for us, or at least our government, is for them to assist us in having, there's RFPs, there's requests for, it's
your RFPs, RFQs,
and whatnot. There can be a database of a almost like an innovators platform, or almost like something where, people can push for their businesses, but it can be also consumed by government. But for me, what is most important is reaching out to people. So B2B, I've done that. I've trained corporates and trained at corporates and the likes. However, my passion was still for the people.
Yeah.
And I have, together with my team, we formed partnerships with Central Johannesburg TVET College. They don't quite have a fully fledged ICT faculty. And that's where we come in with our expertise to try and you get that most of the learners have touched on a specific course and they've completed it, but when they get to the workplace to do their work integrated learning, they don't know how to operate a laptop.
Yeah.
But you've done business administration but just the deeper understanding of operating Excel on a more
advanced level.
Level. So for me, reaching out to these communities and having partnerships with the likes of CJC, TVET College, as well as other colleges, prominent, institutions within in the country, such as UNISA and the likes, to have a greater reach.
From a B2C
From a
perspective.
B2C perspective.
Yeah.
We've also partnered up with your iFundis and EdAid.
Great.
So that, learners are able to apply and get funding. What we do also is we apply quite a lot at the various SETAs, especially the one we belong to, for grants, so that we are able to also subsidize certain programs. Go to schools and teach teachers how to implement a computer-based
and don't be afraid of the laptop.
And I mean, be afraid of the laptop.
That speaks largely about, I would say that's your advocacy work when it talks to creating access. Now, just lastly, I've got two more things.
Okay.
One, to any young woman watching this today, watching this discussion, and they're unsure if they believe and if they belong in this space, what would you say to them?
Embrace the journey. Firstly, it's okay to be scared, because we live in a world, especially with so much gender-based violence, where it is almost a silent threat that don't be too bold. You can be, but don't be too assertive. Don't be too... Be exactly that. Your truest self. Explore your utmost potential, and it will get you very far. The only person that can really, really psych you up to a point where you achieve certain things that you never thought you'd be able to achieve is yourself. You can have a coach, you can have a mentor. It's very important to have a coach, a mentor,
and a sponsor.
And a sponsor. It's very important. We all hear that. Practically, it's not that easy. You can hire a coach, yes. To get a good mentor, it's not that easy. To get a sponsor, even worse. But if you truly, truly, truly believe in yourself, you will make it work with absolutely zero handouts.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for that, Naledi. Any tech trends that you're excited about in 2025? Or into 2026, but 2025.
2025, I really want to understand AI a lot more. I feel like it's so complex, people do not understand it. I'm personally, as much as I'm in the tech space, I am a bit scared of it and its future. But I'm also excited about the potential it brings in especially in developing countries, because in more developed countries, you get so many, you're spoiled for choice, so you don't really use a platform or an innovative tool for what it's meant for. But in developing countries, we find ways to use it for what it's really, really, really needed for, I really want us to be... I believe so much in South Africa, and South Africans just genuinely.
Huge potential.
There's so much potential. We're a very small, in terms of numbers, very small nation. I always say there are 60 million people in South Africa. What are you doing to contribute towards a better cause, What are you doing to change the shift, anything? You could be a teacher that is unemployed, sitting at home. And I made
with all that knowledge.
With all that knowledge, you've got YouTube, you've got internet.
Wow.
But you're going to watch someone else's makeup tutorial. So it's attitude. If there's one thing, I really, the adoption of tech in our country, we really need to shift in terms of our thinking and attitude. So there's quite a lot of potential. There's a lot of exciting things that I personally am involved in, whether it's our partnership with CJC, We've also done some work in Mozambique with Maluana Science and Technology Park.
Wow.
The government of Mozambique is really keen, like they really, really want to push forward in having a digitally enabled citizen. They don't have the resources for it, but they've got a very resilient nation.
And that's what we need, right?
That's
If
what
we
we need,
if we look
beside,
at that. Sure. So we are out of time. However, before we close off, if you could please complete the sentence. And it's really not to put you on the spot. Absolutely not. Being a dynamic woman in ICT means, what does it mean for you?
What it means for me is changing the narrative that it's a world for a certain type of person, you know. Changing the narrative, pushing through barriers and not being defined by them.
Thank you so much. And there you have it. An absolutely amazing conversation with Naledi Moncho. Thank you so much for gracing us with your presence. Again, it's looking into how do we challenge the status quo in the ICT space or sector in South Africa. It's about showcasing women that are breaking barriers, who are dynamic, who are powerhouses. Thank you very much for joining us again for episode 2. I'd like to thank all our partners, Edgars Beauty. Thank you for the face beat. We all look pretty. And for the Radisson for hosting us in this beautiful penthouse. Thank you very much to Tharific. And I am your host, Sibongile Martino. Until next time, thank you.